Good morning. Hi, Simon. How are you?
Good, bright and breezy Monday morning.
I know. What a great way to start the week.
Yeah.
Absolutely delighted to be here. Now, let me see. We've got a couple of people in here already. Let's see who we have. Anna, good morning. Petra, Jamie, Barbara, and Vitalia. Great to see everybody today. How
Yeah.
was your weekends? Are you all raring to go for this fabulous session with Simon this morning? Maybe refresh our memories and pop into the chat where you're dialing in from,
Yeah.
which would be fantastic. How are things, Simon? Did you have a nice weekend?
I did, yeah. I did a lot of walking. We did about 33 kilometers of walking, my wife and I, on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We do a lot of walking, and then you just realize at the end of the weekend you've walked a long way, so it was cool. But
Yeah,
relaxing.
you do walk a lot. I went out with the dogs yesterday, and there was a humongous queue for the park, the car park, which I'd never seen before, to be honest. Which
Yeah.
is great. But
Everybody, everybody just wants to get out.
I know. Just typing, see everyone coming into the chat there.
Yeah, we'll give it a little while.
Yeah, absolutely. Another action-packed session today, no doubt.
Yeah.
Mr. Haigh.
Yeah. So today we've dealt with introduction and personal growth. Today we're going to get deeper into leadership growth and look at things like influencing and power and leadership mindset. And then we're going to move into business growth and things like strategy and how you manage change and communications and teams. So we're getting deeper and deeper into this, which is good.
Fantastic. Sounds great. Sounds really good. I'm really interested. I had to flick through all of the slides today, as I usually do. And I'm like, okay, I'll be taking some notes myself during today's session, which is always great. I feel like I'm in such a privileged position to be be able to moderate some of these amazing sessions and pick up some fantastic insights myself. So it's
it's great.
It's really, really good. Let me see. We are still we've got somebody else come in there. Oh no, we don't. Barbara, I'm not sure if you were with us there before.
You are.
Yeah. We give it another 2 minutes. What do you think?
Yeah.
Fantastic. We've got another great week kicking off this week. Some amazing things, and not just, I suppose, the Ignite workshops, but all of the other workshops as well that we're running too. So it's
busy.
Packed. Yeah, and we actually have a transition year student with us this week as well.
Wow.
So very interesting. So she's there with Bridget at the moment. Hopefully won't scare her too much about how the real world
how busy you are.
But it's great. It's a gorgeous day out there again today.
It is.
Wasn't yesterday fabulous?
Oh yes, there wasn't a cloud in the sky. It was amazing.
No, it was amazing. I think let's go. I know we have a lot to get through. Good morning, everybody. My name is Sorcha Finucane, and I'm the owner and founder of Trained In. We are absolutely delighted to welcome you back to day 2 of the 7 steps to career growth with Simon Haigh. This is part of the Ignite program, which we are running in conjunction with Taste Your Success SkillNet, which is aimed and focused at the food, drink, and hospitality industry, helping support you in terms of career, business, physical, and mental health. And we would love to just share with you before we start a bit of housekeeping. We can't see you and we can't hear you, so please use the chat facility. Simon is here to help you, and I know we're going to be going through an awful lot of material, and some of you will probably digest it throughout, but if you have any question at any point throughout this session, please pop it into the chat. If you don't want to put it into the public forum, please send it directly to me and I will withhold your details. We will be running some polls throughout the session, and I have a lot of files to share with you guys again today. If you can't download them for any reason, just send me an email and I can pop them all over directly to you. I will as well pop in the Taste Your Success Learner profile. If you haven't completed it already, please complete it at some stage today or before the end of the week. And I will also pop in the Ignite timetable And it's really important that we share this with as many people as possible so that the program itself is as successful as it can be by reaching as many people around the country. And with all that said, Simon, what are we going through today? I know you briefly told us there already.
Yeah. So we're going to, as I said, we're going to go deeper. We're going to move from introduction and personal growth then into how you start applying that from a leadership perspective. So how you influence people, because you can only be a leader if you have followers, and how you leverage your power, and what's your leadership mindset. And then moving out of that, we'll look at business growth. So how do you use all those skills to manage strategy and change and communications and manage or be part of a team? So quite a lot to get through today.
Huge amount, huge amount. So without further ado, I will start your slides for you and I will let you take over. I'm here in the background, so don't worry.
Cool. Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. And we'll do what we did the same as last week. We'll do an hour up until 55 minutes up to 11 o'clock. And then we'll take a sort of a 15-minute break. If you can all stay logged on, but obviously go and make a cup of coffee, whatever. And then we'll come back at about 11:15. So it might be probably 10-minute break. And then 11:15, do another hour, and then questions at the end. And please, there's a small enough group of you here. There's quite a lot registered, but obviously a lot of people can't turn up. So feel free to really put as much chat in as you can. Make this as interactive as you can. Anna, Petra, Jamie, Barbara, and Vitalia. Really, this is about you. This is not about me. I'm just passing stuff over. In fact, I think somebody else has joined us, which is great. Looking to see that's Pelagi, which is great. Welcome. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. So let's go into week 2. So as you can see in red, we dealt with in week 1 introductions and personal growth. And today we're going to deal with leadership growth and business growth. Next week next session, which I think is January, we're going to deal with a whole big area in one go of deal making or sales or business development or negotiation. It's all wrapped up into one. And then the final session, we'll be looking at brand and bringing it all together. So let's dive into leadership and business growth. Before I do that, just a recap. So in last week's session, we looked at, getting to know you, the overview, the 3 R's of winning business. Are you a blocker or enabler? We looked at emotions, emotional intelligence, and motivations, and you had some questionnaires which you can use in your own time. And if you have any questions, comments, observations, hi Pelagi, you just put in there, which is great, in the chat box. Please just share as much as you feel you want to share in this public forum. Well, it's a private forum here, or if you don't want to do it here, again, straight to Sorcha. And then we looked at communication. And then we moved on to personal growth, and we looked at the mindset and mindfulness, the 3-layered brain, flow state, little look at dishonesty in the whole area, resilience, assertiveness, and why people are ineffective deal closers or business development people. Okay, so in just over 50 minutes, let's go into leadership growth. And when I talk about leadership growth, I'm going to look a little bit about, first of all, the third type of resilience. We looked at the first 2 types of resilience, self and life resilience. We're going to look at the third type, which is societal, which is reaching out to other people, which is really about being a leader. Then we're going to look at leadership growth mindset, clarity and single-minded determination. It's really important as a leader that you need to have as much clarity as you can to reduce all that social media type noise in your head that's bumping around all the time in all of our heads. Quite a bit about how you manage leadership in a crisis. I see Sorcha's put up the learner profile. That's great. The whole area of information and knowledge and how it enhances your power. We've got a really interesting, a couple of really interesting polls and question and sort of tests for you around influencing skills and how you leverage your power. Then we'll look at key traits of effective leaders and a few more things there. Okay. I'd like to start with this quote here. For me, if you're wondering what the leader of the future, which is today, basically the future starts today or starts in 2020 because the world's been shaken up. And the good thing is that as each of these weeks go by with you, I think there's more and more good news coming out. So I think there is more and more hope. It was interesting yesterday, I heard on the radio that a lot of the conditions for the future, can't believe I'm talking about it, but there will be a boom again, right? There will be, because there are 3 conditions for any economic boom, and they are the ease of buying and selling stocks and property. That's definitely there. Low interest rates, definitely there. You just need a spark or a stimulus, and I think to ignite a boom. And I think with all these vaccines and all the massive advancements in medicine and technology, I predict that within, probably won't be 2021 because we're going to be recovering, but within the next 3 years, 5 years, I think there'll be a massive economic boom. Maybe I'm wrong, but and Marshall Goldsmith talks about the mindset that you all need as leaders. Marshall is the world's #1 leadership thinker, for those of you who don't know him. I've been fortunate enough he's kind of a mentor for me and endorsed my work and written a couple of forwards to my books. And so what he says is, to be successful in tomorrow's world, which starts today, right? It starts at this session. Leaders have to embrace global thinking, cross-cultural diversity, that's gender balance as well, understand rapidly changing technology, that's number 3, rely more on collaborations, number 4, and be facilitators rather than experts, number 5. And that means, because we're going to be a lot more disparate and remote and online working, leaders are going to have to be able to facilitate, like I am with you. I don't know where everybody's dialing in from here, so I'm facilitating rather than controlling, okay? So I think it's really worth always reflecting back on Marshall Goldsmith quote for all of you as leaders going forward. So let's look at, and if anybody has any comments, let's just go back on there. If anybody disagrees with any of that or what Marshall says, or you think he's missing anything, or you think any of that should be tweaked, I'd be really interested. And because I know Marshall, I can even feed that back to him and even connect I'd be more than happy to connect any of you by LinkedIn directly to Marshall Goldsmith. So that's just an offer I'm making available to all of you there. So just feel free to comment on that, and I can send it to him as long as it's not derogatory, and we could maybe start a conversation. Okay, so leadership or societal resilience. Again, like the other 2 types, there are 4 types, subtypes of leadership or societal resilience. There is A, reading, communication, and trust-building cues. Then there's a whole area of questioning and listening, the whole area of influencing, which we're going to get into in detail. This is very, very important. It's kind of the other side of assertiveness, which is what we dealt with last time. And then finally, meaningful relationships and boundary setting. So reading, communication, and trust-building cues. I think I mentioned before, communication is, so important. It's the key tool for any leader, okay? If you're not communicating effectively and efficiently, then you're not going to really be a successful leader. And, there's 2 types of communication. I think I've mentioned before. There is verbal, which is the words we use, and then there's non-verbal, which is body language, etc., etc. And I think the key here is that it's very important as a leader, unless you get others comfortable talking about themselves, and unless you show genuine interest in others, you're going to struggle to have followers, and therefore you're going to struggle to be a leader. So leaders do need to have, particularly in this modern age, more and more empathy. And I think you're going to find that more and more CEOs and CFOs and CMOs are going to be, instead of being behind the scenes, which they traditionally have been, the younger generation generally is going to want to see more of them online, doing podcasts and stuff like this. So I think visibility and connection as leaders for all of us is going to be more and more important. And all of you here, you're all communicating through this platform, and therefore you're presenting yourself and you're communicating. That's part of the leadership process. A leader cannot be hidden away, certainly not in this modern world. Then there's this whole area of questioning and listening. And Tony Robbins, the successful, the highly successful motivator, talks about successful people ask better questions and as a result, get better answers. That's really important. So just look at that again. Successful people ask better questions and as a result, get better answers. And so don't be afraid of, asking questions. Of course, don't ask the same question 5 or 6 times, because that's probably not the smartest thing to do. But I always find that those people who ask more questions, including here online, tend to be paying attention, tend to be more interested, tend to have more of a growth mindset. So I like to look for people who ask questions. And the more open and authentic you are in your questioning, the more you're likely to receive quality information back. The best way to know what somebody else wants is to ask them and wait for their response. And you'd be amazed how many people don't do this well, particularly the masculine side. The feminine, I'm not going to talk about men and women because we all have masculine and feminine, but the feminine tends to be better at asking questions and truly listening rather than hearing, right? There's all sorts of theories around why motherhood and all these kind of things. genetics and nurturing and all these sort of things. But I think we all need to practice our questioning and listening skills. Any questions, any comments, any observations? Because we've got tons more to go through, and I'd like this to be as interactive as possible. Otherwise, I'll just keep going. Anything around that Marshall Goldsmith quote would be really interesting. If you can think of, from all of your perspective as leaders or potential leaders, or if you want to grow into leadership roles, maybe just put in the chat box, what would you like to have covered for you personally in these the next 2 3/4 sessions? Any burning things you really want to find out about, and I can build them into the decks, okay? So anything, from a professional perspective, obviously. So the whole area of influencing, and we're going to do a poll shortly, not yet, and we're going to do a really interesting exercise that you can take away, and I think Sorcha has put it in, or will put it in. She's put it in already into the files area. So influencing. Influencing is critically important for a leader. You're not going to raise money on the stock market if you don't influence as a CEO. You're not going to get investors to invest in your business. You're not going to win tenders if you're a coach or consultant if you're not good at influencing. So this is not just something that actors need to be good at. All of us in business, and not just leaders, we're all leaders. I forgot to say that at the beginning. We're all leaders, right? We're all leading whatever we do during the day, including ourselves, right? We have to get ourselves out of bed. We have to get ourselves ready for the day, and we have to lead ourselves through it. And we not only have to influence others, but we also have to influence our own mindset. Remember, I've dealt with mindset before. We have to influence ourselves in a positive way to keep going, even through the tough times. So what is influencing? Influencing is altering behavior through your personality, right? So that's different to altering behavior through communication. So persuasion is slightly different. So persuasion is when you use communication and you whip up a foment of enthusiasm in the audience. And, you know, there are major global leaders, some not so negative, not so positive in the past, who are very good at getting disenfranchised people behind them and using big speeches and stuff and getting them behind them. That's more persuasion. Influence is much more subtle. We all know those people like, I don't know, Steve Jobs from Apple and Barack Obama, who have they have a quietness about them, but they have an assuredness, and there's a magic about them that we want to follow, right? So we know. So what influencers do is set a vision of an optimum outcome, and then without using coercion, they motivate people to work towards a goal. Okay, that's what influencing is. Okay, so let's just move on to an exercise. And in fact, I think we've got a poll after that, but let me just show you this. So broadly speaking, there are 7 types of influencing style. Okay, as you can see along the top, there's 4 very positive ones, and then there's the 3 below that aren't so positive, depending on your perspective. Okay, so there's reasoning, using logical presentation of ideas to get your view across. Okay, there's friendliness, and we all use all of these at different times, and as leaders we will and we should use these at different times. Then there is friendliness, you know, creating goodwill between 2 people, going out for a drink before a business meeting, that kind of thing. There's coalition, getting the support of others to back you up. There's bargaining, using negotiation skills. So they're kind of constructive, positive influencing skills. Then there's slightly more punchy ones. So there's assertiveness. There is higher authority, which is kind of, I'll go to my boss and my boss will tell you, probably slightly more negative undertones, depending on the circumstance. And there is sanctions. If you don't do this, I'll thump the table or I'll fine you. And that sounds very negative, but sometimes it's necessary. Okay. So, for example, you know, Brexit, the British government, by passing that law, which potentially puts the Good Friday Agreement in peril, the EU is right to say we're going to issue court proceedings against you because that's breach of international law. That's correct. That's the right thing to do from an influencing perspective, to hopefully try and get the British government to see sense. So they're the 7 main types of influencing skills. So the first poll here is, and it'd be good to see any comments that you have as well coming out of this, is which influencing styles do you use the most? And I'm just looking for the results here. Generally speaking, right? So we all use different types, but in your gut feeling, which type do you think you use the most to get your way, right? In business or as an employee or in a work situation? Is it friendliness? Which do you feel is you're most comfortable with? Friendliness, sanctions, assertiveness, or reasoning? And I'll give you 30 seconds. It looks like friendliness and reasoning is coming out in front, which doesn't surprise me. I'd imagine you all probably use assertiveness a little bit more than you're saying. Maybe it's built, obviously there's a blend of all these as well. You could actually use all 4 of those in one go if you can perceive the situation. You could start off friendly, or you can start off friendly, then move into reasoning, and then a little bit more assertiveness. And if you're not getting your own way, you can start thumping the table, which I wouldn't recommend. But you can imagine a situation where all of those could exist. So it looks like friendliness is the one you use most, which is great because we're all a little family here, hopefully on this 4-session journey or 8 half-session journeys. So this friendliness has come out top, and then reasoning. So this is a really, really, really powerful exercise that I would recommend you use going forward. Give it a go this week. And I actually kind of use a form of this for myself for every situation, right? Not always, because I forget sometimes. But so in this exercise, practice this, and I think this is definitely in the file, so you can print this off and use this whenever. You could do this every day or once a week or once a month to review. So think of, say, 3 situations you've been in the last 3 months. It could be where you needed to use influencing skills, right? It could have been asking for a pay rise. It could have been negotiating getting on this course. It could have been looking for a promotion at work. It could have been anything like that, right? A situation. And then reflect back and think, what was the influencing style you used? Was it friendliness, assertiveness, reasoning, negotiation, etc.? And then honestly reflect. Do you think that was the appropriate method that you used, or could you have used a more appropriate one? And then what do you think would have been the worst one to use? And as you can see, this is a bit like when you exercise. You can only build muscles if you constantly exercise, and you can only truly become an efficient, influential influencer, excuse the pun, if you practice this stuff, right? It doesn't just come to people. So people like Barack Obama practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced. Yes, some people have more of an innate skill around this, but most people have to practice. So that's influencing. Any questions or comments on that would be great. I'll just wait to see if there's any questions or comments. If you have any concerns as the different types, don't get too hung up on, let me just go back to show you the different types. So there's reasoning, using logical presentation of ideas. There's friendliness. There's coalition, getting the support of others. There's negotiating, which is kind of similar to reasoning. So if you think they're too similar, just blend it into one. Don't get too hung up on this. We all know what assertiveness is. We all know what going to your boss is. We all know what, well, I'll find you, or I'll punish you, or I'll reward you. There's the positive side. So just reflect, and I recommend you do that exercise. Okay, so that's influencing. And we'll just move on now onto meaningful relationships and boundary setting. Let me just come out of that. Okay, so this is also very, 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 very important. The closer you, and there's 2 aspects of this. Yes, you have to be creating meaningful relationships to be a positive leader. You can't be a leader in a vacuum, right? If you're just, well, okay, I was going to say you can't be in a prison cell by yourself. Nelson Mandela was different because he already had followers before he went in. But if you start your life in isolation, you're not going to have followers, okay? You understand what I'm saying? You have to have meaningful relationships to have followers to become a leader. The converse is you also need to set boundaries, because once you become a leader or you get into the public spotlight and or people see you more and more online, you are going to get people who try and bring you down, who detract from you, who don't like you, who are jealous of you, who try and ridicule you. This is just part of life, okay, particularly in the social media world. So conversely, you need to set boundaries. That's very, very important. And only hang out with people who are not toxic to you. Cut those people off who are toxic to you. That's just not a good thing. So the closer you get to knowing the intentions and the assumptions of another person or other people, the more likely you are to get what you want from a positive perspective, through a trust perspective. That's very important to say. So you need to be self-aware enough also to protect your well-being, right? if you're a natural people pleaser like I am, and I don't really like saying no, but I'm learning more and more as I go through life, and I'm getting older, so I should have learned that there are just some people I just have to say no to. There are some situations I have to say no to. I'm wondering if any of you have had situations where you, looking back, whether Barbara or Vitalia or Jamie or Petra or Anna or Pelagi, whether looking back, any of you have had situations where you thought, I should have set a boundary sooner, without giving private information away. But if you want to share any circumstances where you wish you'd done that sooner, that would be good. So meaning relationships and boundary setting is really, really, really important. Any questions or concerns? The influencing exercise is a very powerful one for you to do, and I recommend you do that. And I'll keep moving on. Relationship building. So I've mentioned it's important to build relationships as a leader, and you have to influence to build relationships. The reason you have to do this is because unless you're born wealthy, we all have to make money, right? And to make money in this modern day and age as a leader, whether you are running your own one-person business or whether you're leading Google, right? Or whether you're running a division in your company, or whether you're a manager or a supervisor, it doesn't matter where you are, you have to build relationships. As I said, you can't operate in a vacuum to be a leader. And to build relationships, Ted Rubin, if none of you have heard of Ted Rubin, Rubin, you can see his name down there at the bottom left. He is the world's leading expert in what he calls return on relationships. It's kind of a new kind of saying he's come up with. He's trademarked it because we've all heard of return on investment from a business perspective, but he talks more about return on relationships. And increasingly, it's been proven that to be an effective leader, Sorcha's in the situation. People need to like Sorcha. They also have to respect her. They also have to admire her. It doesn't say trust on there, but obviously trust as well. So like, respect, admire, and trust. And if any one of those four kind of falls down, then you're not giving yourself the best possible chance to have followers and therefore be an effective leader. Okay, so you need to work at all of those things. And another way, before I go on, I just want to talk about this. So, we all talk about return on investment. I think there's something in the chat there. Sorcha's just put in Ted Rubin. I think it's Rubin, but that's great. Return on relationship. We all traditionally talk in business or from a leader perspective. It doesn't matter whether you're the CEO of a company or whether you're running a division or if you're running ingredients in a kitchen in a restaurant, right? You need to understand you need to make money, which is revenue. You need to manage risk. You need to maintain your reputation. And this applies to all of you as well, right? All 22 of you registered here. You need to make money, revenue, manage risk in your life, and maintain your reputation. What I'm saying here is that going forward in this much more sensitive world, that below that roof of the triple R, risk, revenue, reputation, I think there are new dynamics coming into play, and particularly coming out of this sensitive gender balance world, diversity world, post-COVID. We've all been completely wounded this year. All of humankind has. So I'm hoping there's going to be a softer, more relationship-based perspective around how leaders lead organizations and divisions and teams and yourself. And so below the roof, you've got the four new columns: communication, sensitive communication skills, awareness, all the stuff we're talking about in this program. I think are going to be more and more important for you as leaders. Having a balanced mindset and being balanced in your viewpoint, so gender balance, diversity balance, etc., etc. Cohesion, being cohesive, right? Being all inclusive, not saying, right, only we can be in this, you've got to be outside. And then finally, advancement, much more merit-based advancement rather than the old boys or girls clubs from the past. I think there's going to be a lot more open-mindedness needed for strong leadership. And I think unless we all embrace all of us here, unless we embrace this movement towards more sensitivity, I think the old table-thumping, white, male, stale, middle-class kind of approach to leadership, I think is going to fade, not quickly in some places, but it will fade, okay? And if anybody challenges me on that, I feel free, open to challenge. So just building on relationships, how do you, so you might be saying, how do I build relationships? I'm an introvert, or I'm shy, or I'm too busy, or nobody's ever taught me this. Just some very, very high level ready reckoners there for you. And these are things that I try and turn to when I'm so busy, particularly this year, I'm at home and we're all isolated. You can still do this online. I'm building relationships with all of you through this program. So build relationships one at a time, be friendly, make connections, ask people questions. People love being asked questions. Also talk about you, but not too much. Go places and do things. It's slightly difficult right now, but we can still be on different programs, online programs. Accept people for the way they are. Assume other people want to form a relationship, but be very careful. And this is from a leadership perspective about being taken advantage of. Overcome the fear of rejection. This one is really big, right? If you don't ask, if none of you asks me to connect with you on LinkedIn, we won't connect. So just ask, right? If any of you has any questions of me and you want to ask them through LinkedIn messaging, just ask, or to Sorcha, just ask. Be persistent. And then I see Sorcha's just put in there connect with Sorcha, and you should all definitely connect with Sorcha. Be persistent, but don't pester. Invite people to get involved. All of you could be, you can ask Sorcha to, maybe collaborate in something, or me, or any of the other trainers, if you have a project going forward. And try and enjoy the interaction with people. Obviously be careful, but enjoy the interaction. So this is really, really important. For me, this encapsulates what I think is really kind of the core of what a good leader is going to require going forward, right? And that's being likable. That doesn't mean being a pushover. That doesn't mean being soft. That doesn't mean surrendering. That doesn't mean just being sort of jelly. But being likable means, and I've kind of broken it down, trust is a belief in the reliability, the truth, the capability, or the strength that you have in someone else, right? So kind of we all sense what trust isn't in our guts, but it's very hard to break it down what it is. People buy from people and brands they trust, generally. Obviously, there's financial stuff at play, but generally, people tend to trust people and brands they like, and they like people and brands they connect with, right? So I've tried to break that down. And if you can try and you live your life through this belief, trust, like, connection prism, I think you give your best possible chance of being an effective leader. Okay, move on. So leadership growth mindset. So we've looked a little bit about influencing and relationships. So what mindset do you might be asking Anna or Petra or Jamie, what kind of mindset do I need to be an effective leader? Well, I think above all else, as you can see on the left there, having an awareness of your emotions and limitations is really important. I was on a training program about nearly 20 years ago when I was legal counsel for Dell, and I was the most junior executive on this program. I was there with 11 other very senior executives around the world, and it was a week's residential thing. And the premise of the week's training was you can only become an effective or be an effective leader, right? If you're aware of the negative thoughts and feelings that you have in you and the positive ones. Look, we all as humans, let's face it, have the capacity to love, and we have the capacity to kill, right? If we're in self-defense or whatever, right? So that, a bit like Star Wars, there's a light side and there's a light force and the dark force in all of us. Those leaders or those people who are aware of those don't veer towards one or the other, but aware of them, right? And then, and then practice. So who are not blindsided by the negative stuff. That's what I'm talking about. We all need to be aware that we have those capacities, but maintain them and manage them, right? And then focus on the positive. Are more likely, positive energy, positive outcomes, positive results are more likely to become successful as leaders. And breaking that down a bit more, it's important that we learn to see life and business as it is, not how we want it to be, right? So as a leader, you might be completely blindsided by economics, and something might happen in the market and your business might, go down very rapidly. How do you as a leader manage that, right? We'll deal with some of this as we go through. You also need to be open to new ideas. All of us on this, we all need to be open to new ideas, new ways of thinking, questioning our beliefs, and navigating our way through whatever comes of us. That's very important. Okay. Any questions? You've all been quite quiet, which hopefully means I'm explaining myself okay. But feel free to put anything in there, anything in the box. The more we can interact, the better. That would be great. Vitalia, I don't know whether you want to add anything, or Barbara, or Petra. Feel free to put anything in there. Any thoughts you had, any books you've read on leadership, any observations, anything you've heard from anybody else, any advice you've ever received from anybody else around your own leadership journey would be great for you to share. Okay, so 25 minutes, and then we'll have a short break in 25 minutes once we've gone through leadership growth. So we're now going to talk about this crisis that we're in, and it is a crisis, and every crisis in history has passed. Let me just say that. And obviously we're sensing now green shoots. I think for the first time since about March, the last couple of weeks, we're actually getting some positive news. Thank goodness. So vaccines, I think there are now 3 coming that are at least 90%, which if you put them 3 together means, with other tests and other things coming, I think we're going to start moving back to some sort of normality, not in the first half of next year. We have to be patient, but definitely in the second half of next year, I think we're going to start moving back to some form of normality. And as I said, I think there will be a boom, not maybe immediately after this, or in the future. So we all need to be prepared for this. Unlike other economic crises, which have normally been caused by the same things in history, right back to the 1600s, financial bubbles or economic monetary issues or oil, this is the world's first health-induced supply and demand-sided, shock. Leadership resilience will be best displayed by those leaders who display clarity of thought, effective communication, and strong but compassionate decision-making. So break that down. So as a leader, all of us are leaders, right? Right now, we're all leaders in our own capacity, and we're all going to excel even more as leaders if we display clarity of thought, effective communications, and strong but compassionate decision-making. So leading through all 3 brains, as it were, and that is the mind, the heart, and the gut, right? Our gut feeling is 80,000 years old because it's been honed through the whole of humankind, whereas my brain is only 53 years old. So we need to operate through all aspects of each of those 3 brains compassionately, calmly, and courageously. And tough decisions need to be made. They need to be made, right, by all of us, but in a respectful way, right? So that's very, very important. So using all 3 brains is really critically important. Leaders also need to be transparent and honorable, right? What I mean by that is, we all know leaders. I mean, Donald Trump, you could argue, would be the opposite of this. So for months and months on end, he's been saying that everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine with COVID, and everything's going to pass over. And I remember he's saying that we're all going to be back to work in April, and yet we're not. Okay, so and whenever a leader is not completely transparent and honourable, what do humans do? We fill the gap with anxiety. We sense that leader is not being truthful and honest. So leaders need to be transparent and honourable, right? It's very, very important for all of us. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to give away company secrets or trade secrets, but that human beings feel gaps with anxiety. So the worst thing you can do, any of us can do, if you have bad news, right, is to let it out, but in a calm, compassionate, courageous way. And trust very quickly evaporates if you try and hide things up. Or if Michael Dell, I worked for Dell at one point, and Michael Dell used to have the saying, don't perfume the pig. So if it's bad news, don't pretend it's good news. So that's really, really important. If anybody has some thoughts on that as well, if without naming any names, but any managers or bosses who you think fell into the trap of constantly saying things were okay when they're not, you'll find that they tend to 99%, 95% of the time, they come undone in the end. So if there's bad news, you need to say it as a leader. Sorcha saying, love that, don't perfume the pig. It was a great one. I think the other one was don't paint lipstick on the pig. It was another one. A little bit kind of offensive, but you get the point. If it's bad news, do not pretend it's good news. But don't obviously tell every reason why it's not good news. Be very calm, compassionate, and courageous about how you say it. Resilient leadership delivers through obscurity. This is very, very important for all of us today, right? So none of us knows what tomorrow is going to bring. Tomorrow might be a great day. It might be a bit of a pig of a day, right? For any of us, for various different reasons, financially or weather, or we just don't feel very well, or we might receive bad news as leaders, as humans, right? Or we might not have all the information we need to make decisions. And that's kind of what this is talking about. And, Sorcha with her company, she's never, ever going to have 100% information on to make sure that she makes exactly the right decisions. If any business owner had that, they would have trillions of dollars in the bank account. Maybe Jeff Bezos has a lot of this stuff. But so as a leader, and all of us have to operate through expediency, right? We have to make the best decisions based on the information we have rather than waiting for perfection. I often see people who start up their own business or who are in, roles in organizations that are politically sensitive, or they're looking for promotion, and they're always waiting for perfect information before they make a decision. If you do that, somebody else is going to take your job, right? They're going to replace you, or somebody else is going to get there in front of you in terms of your business. You have to hone the skill of working on the basis of using as strong data as possible, and then going on gut feeling, right? That gut feeling, don't forget, is 80,000 years old in all of us. So that really is what sets out an expedient, successful leader from somebody who's a perfectionist. Being a perfectionist as a leader basically is the same way as just being a different way of saying, a nice way of saying you're a time waster, because there's no such thing as perfection in business or in leadership. This is very, very important as well for any company you're working in, or if you're working for yourself or you're looking to work for yourself. And the same applies to Sorcha. You need to, any company needs to ensure a steady purpose and a steady mission. That doesn't mean that the company can't change direction or morph or bring new skill sets in or whatever, right? Or merge or whatever. But the public buys, I mentioned before, that followers buy from or are attracted to, steadiness, trustability, respect, likability, and therefore you have to be steady from a purpose and a mission perspective. And at these times, those leaders who are able to balance, as I said before, current state, corporate care, dealing with fighting fires right now, we're thinking about, and this is the challenge for all of us, right? So this year has been a year like no other year, probably since 1945 in the Western world, and we're all a bit shocked. And nobody really knows. I don't think anybody's taking next year as granted as we have previous years, okay? And yet there is definitely seeds of hope, more than if we turn the clock back this time last year. If we realized what was coming, I think we'd all be very, very pessimistic. But we didn't. We didn't have that ability, thank goodness. But definitely there's more hope going forward, right? I think it's amazing that these vaccines have been created in 10 months in a period that used to take 10 years. And I think that is going to create sparks of innovation that will go places we haven't even thought about yet. Maybe flu will be got rid of forever. Maybe, who knows? So resilient leadership ensures a steady purpose and mission. That's really important as well. This is kind of what I've said before, just wrapping up on this, the whole area of crisis leadership. This saying here, democratic decision-making, dictatorial execution. And this basically what this means is all of us here, right? We have to make decisions sometimes, whether we're the CEO of a company or whether it's just in our own lives and we need to communicate with somebody and bounce ideas off them. The best leaders do this, right? And this came from a quote from a Belgian CEO of a tech company, Xilinx, which are based out in City West, European headquarters, and I was head of legal and corporate affairs for a while. Wim Rolants was the CEO, and he used to say, democratic decision-making, dictatorial execution. So as a leader, you have to get all the information you need, and Sorcha has to do this. She talks to me, and she talks to other people and tech advisors and other advisors and shareholders. But ultimately, I hate to say this, Sorcha, you're on your own. You have to make the dictatorial execution. You actually have to make the decision at the end. And you, and I'm not pointing fingers at you, I'm the same in my own business, you have to be accountable for the decisions, even though you've taken all that advice on board. And that applies to all of us as leaders. So That's why it's great to build relationships and have people you can trust to bounce off, because the more of that democratic decision making you get, the less chance you are going to fail in your decision. That doesn't mean you won't, but just be very, very mindful of that. Okay, and then I think finally, final one on this one, on crisis. Resilient leadership provides a bridge to the future. So this is very, very important as well. I kind of talk about three-legged stool here. Okay, so all of us as leaders, and I'm talking more as leaders of companies here, right, have to do three things right now. Leaders of, Pennies or Apple or Google or Smurfit Kappa, whatever company it is, they have to manage costs today because things are a bit dicey and a bit tricky, while B, maintaining advertising and campaigns saying that the business is continuing, while C, projecting forward to that boom that's going to come one day. That's not easy to do, right? And the same applies to all of us as well. Today, are you going to go out and buy a new laptop, or are you going to wait until next year, right? So you need to balance all of this stuff. You need to manage today, but also the best leaders have an ability to project forward and balance what they need to do today with what they could achieve in the future. That takes quite a lot of skill set, and we're going to deal with that as we go through more and more the sessions 3 and 4 as well. So that's just a little bit around crisis, leadership in crisis. Any comments or observations would be welcome. Otherwise, I'll just keep going. We'll have another 14 minutes, and then we'll take a break for 10 to 15 minutes. See Sorcha. Oh, I know it's great to have Simon to vent to if needed. And likewise, I have, I vent as well. I have people I talk to as well. You have to have people you can like, trust, and respect, so you feel comfortable enough to say what it is. I'm struggling. I find this difficult. I need help with this. What should I do, right? And that person can give you a bit of a push, but at the end of the day, you have to make the decision. But you need those people that you can trust, respect, and like. You can't just say that to anybody, because some people will take that information and try and bring you down, right? There are people who do that. So you have to be very careful. And what I said about relationships and boundaries. The whole area of power. Now, this is very, very interesting and very, very important for all of you as leaders. So there are 4 in your lives generally. There are 4 types of power that all of you here have. Anna, Pelagi, Petra, Jamie, Barbara, Vitalia, and Sorcha, and me as well. We all have the ability to access resources power, personal organization power, information power, and shared history power. So what do I mean by that? And there's a poll coming on this, and also a really, really powerful self-analysis that you can do in your own time called Sampson's Circles of Power. Resources power. Basically, that's what resources do you have to enable you to optimize your leadership influencing abilities. So, what technology do you have? What access to programs do you have? What money do you have in the bank? All these kind of things. Common sense, resources power. Then there's personal organizational power, which is kind of more, your position in an organization. How senior are you? Or if you have your own company, how many collaborations do you have? Or how many connections do you have? Like Sorcha and I are connected. And that's personal organization power. And then there's information power. We all know that the more information you have, data becomes information, becomes knowledge, becomes wisdom, right? In that order: data, information, knowledge, wisdom. The more of that you have, knowledge is power, right? Wisdom, and then it becomes wisdom. And then shared history power, networking. How many people do you know? How many people you kept in touch with? Because leaders cannot operate in a vacuum, okay? So we'll come back to that in a bit. So which power type, this is the next poll, do you think, generally speaking, you use the most? And then it'd be great if you can put some comments in the box on this. So would you say you tend to use resources power most? So do you fall back on the fact that you can buy, laptops and software and apps to build your credibility, or do you leverage personal organizational power? So are you very good at playing politics in an organization, for want of a better expression? Do you leverage informational power? So do you constantly read, and are you constantly yearning to learn? Or number 4, shared history power. Are you very good at networking, and do you leverage through building networks, keeping in touch with people like Sorcha and me? And so You can see that's it. It's built in there. I can see the second poll down there on the polls page. If you go into that, and I'll wait to see. I always look forward to seeing the first numbers coming through, and it'll be interesting to see. And of course, we use all of these, right? But which one do you feel in your gut feeling that you use the most, or you feel most comfortable using out of those 4? I'll give it a little break. So I think the poll is now active. So resources, information is now jumped into the lead, but that could be just one person. Resources, personal organization, information, shared history. Give it another little bit of time. It's good. So information and shared history, personal organization, kind of roughly between those 3. I'll give it a little bit more time. In fact, we're running a little bit ahead of time, which is great. So we might take an earlier break and then we can refresh, because we're going to go into business growth, which is the big one of the 2 big ones. So we'll just give us a little bit more time. So it looks like information, power, and shared history are equal on 40%, and then personal organization on 20%. Okay. And I'll share with you, it's in the files, but I'll walk you through the exercise you can do in that space. So that's great. It's really, really, really important to build the appearance and perception of your power as a leader. Now, there's a few things to break down here. When I talk about power, I do not mean a dictator's type power. I don't mean unethical power. I do not mean anything negative. I only mean positive, visionary, Steve Jobs, Barack Obama type power, right? That's what sustainable leadership power is about. It's not the negative stuff. Forget about all that Darth Vader stuff. It's the Jedi stuff. So build the appearance and perception of power. The second thing to break down is, I don't mean to lie or deceive. I definitely do not mean ever lie on your LinkedIn to give the impression you're more powerful than you are, because that's just being dishonest. But build the appearance and perception of power by, for example, you can post stuff on LinkedIn. You can research. Any of you could today, if you want to, go on LinkedIn and say you've done this program, or you don't even have to mention this program. You've learned stuff about, there are 4 types of power available, and just write a short thing about those 4 types. You don't even have to mention me. I don't care. I don't own any of this information. And you're starting to give the appearance and perception that you've read, that you've leveraged that particular type of power, which is the knowledge one. So build the appearance and perception of power. And power is a frame of mind and can be developed. And it's interesting because, I've personally been watching all these thought leaders on LinkedIn over the years and wondering, how are they thought leaders? How do they become global gurus in this stuff? And to cut a long story short, I just decided to interview some of these this year, 40-odd global thought leaders in leadership and training and sales and stuff. And now I'm noticing that some of them are starting to tag me in some of their posts. So I've got over that appearance and perception of power thing, right? And that's because I wouldn't say I've badgered them, but I've been in contact with them, communicating with them. I've been posting responses to stuff that some of them have liked. So you can build the appearance and perception that you are a thought leader, right? Even though you don't have a PhD, even though you haven't been around 50-odd years, by the interactions you play, by being very careful and astute, but always being honest in that interaction. This is kind of one of those 4 types of power. This is kind of shared history, or a bit more shared history. Networks and relationships, really, really important. So I can't emphasize this enough. You cannot be a leader in isolation. You have to have people. You have to have followers. People, just looking at LinkedIn, you need to have followers on LinkedIn to have any sort of credibility with these people, these global thought leaders, because that's one of the first things they do. They look at how many followers you have. I know they do. So you have to do that in a very honest, sustainable way. The key traits, just bringing this to an end, of effective leaders. So there are 4 key traits of effective leaders. There's calmness, there's ability to listen, there's the importance of being measured. It's a bit blurry that, but I'll read this out. And there's resilience. So we tend to follow those leaders who are calm in the face of turbulence. If any of you can give examples, you think of a leader, could be Barack Obama or Michelle Obama or any other leaders out there, sports or personnel or business or political or anybody you know who you think display these traits, it would be great. So we tend to follow those who are calm in the face of turbulence. We follow those who can listen, discern, and act. So that's calmness, listening. We follow those who are measured in their response and never erratic. So, you know, hopefully when Sorcha sends a communication to me and asks me for my opinion, I'd imagine she's getting a sense now that I respond quite quickly, and I try to be as simple in my response. I try not to be complicated. And whereas if I send one response one day and it's quick, and then the next time she's waiting for a week and it's verbose and it's complex, she's going to start thinking I'm erratic, right? So you need to be measured. And then resilience as well is key. We've spoken about resilience. So leaders are calm, listening, are measured, very kind of calm, measured in response, and also don't have a problem in being measured, saying, how do you think I'm doing? And resilient. Only with those 4 traits in order can a leader truly then unleash number 5, which is being a visionary, right? So somebody like Steve Jobs or Barack Obama, I mean, normally he's seen as calm. Put aside any politics. If you're a Republican here, I'm talking about the person, not the political person. Calm, listening, measured, resilient. And then because of that, that person comes across as a visionary. Okay. Any questions on that? Otherwise, we'll bring this first session to an end. There's just a couple more slides, so we're actually exactly on time. In any business, for all of you, from today onwards, treat today as day 1 of your growth journey. Well, day 1 was actually last Monday. So let's treat last Monday as day 1. These are the 7 areas. I think I mentioned these before. I can't remember whether I did. The key areas that you're going to need to work on to become really, really powerfully efficient leaders / growth agents, right? And we're going to cover all of these throughout these 4 programs. Communication, we kind of talked about. Employee engagement and lack of alignment. We're going to talk about how you can become more aligned. Cultural deficit. We're going to talk about how you navigate different cultures. Become a visionary. We've spoken about some of the tools of a good leader. Calmness, resilience, etc. Team building. We're going to talk about that stuff. Change management. We're going to talk about that, and use of technology. It's not a course on technology, but we're going to talk a little bit about that in the session just after the break around some of the key things that you're going to need to navigate as leaders in a changed business world. So finally, just before we'll say a 10-minute break, I think, let's just talk about this power, Sampson's Circles of Power questionnaire. I think would be really good. And you can see this is in the files, and I'll just look at this slide first and do this in your own time, right? This is very, very powerful. So here you can see there are 8 different types of power listed. There's power of position, power of personality, power of ideas, power to communicate, power to connect, power to invest, power to reward, and power of intellect. Broadly speaking, if you go back a slide, those 8 are sub-slotted underneath the 4 main ones we mentioned before. So personal organization power includes position and personality. It looks a bit complicated, but when you look between both slides, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So personal organizational power is position and personality. Resources power is investment and reward. Shared history is communicate and connect. And informational power includes ideas and intellect. Don't get too hung up on the boundaries and divisions between these, but you get the point. So in your own time, reflect back on maybe the last 6 months and think for each of those types of power, when you leverage your power of position, or when you leverage your personality with somebody, or your ideas, or your ability to communicate, etc. Second column, how often did you use this power during the last 6 months? All the time, occasionally, rarely, never. In what circumstances would you draw upon it going forward? And how could you use that type of power more effectively? You'll find that if you do this analysis now and you revisit this every maybe 3 months, you'll be quite amazed at. And if you focus on this and reflect on this, maybe weekly or monthly, you'll be amazed at how this can start shifting, okay? So hopefully that made sense. The 4 main types: personal organization, resources, shared history, and information. And then they're subdivided down on that slide there. So feel free to use this anytime in your own personal development, personal growth journey, or leadership growth journey going forward. And that's that. So I think we might take maybe a 15-minute break because there was quite a lot there. But we'll obviously stay logged on. And I'll just grab a coffee, and then if that's okay, and then come back at 11:15. Is that okay, or do you want to do 10 minutes, Sorcha?
No, that's totally fine for me, Simon. I will pop up the usual timer so we know exactly where we are.
Cool.
And
then people can reflect, go and have a coffee. They can look at the files, and then we can come back at 1:15.
Fantastic, great. If anyone wants to pop anything into the chat or anything, feel free to do so because I'm still here in the background.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll see you all I'll be back in 10 minutes, but I'll see you all in a while. Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Nearly there, Simon.
Okay.
I hope you weren't talking to me because I forgot to put my earphones back in.
No.
Okay, let's stop this.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah, let me just start your slides again.
Okay, so welcome back, everybody. So in the next hour, we're going to go into the whole area of business growth. Okay, and that doesn't mean you have to have a business to appreciate this. This is basically, we're going to talk about the key. We've looked at introduction, personal growth, and leadership growth. Now we're looking at the key things you need to be mindful of as an employee, right? The things that impact your business as somebody who's somebody who's responsible for growing a business, and or if you want to be creating your own business. These are some of the really critically important things you need to be looking at. And what we'll do is we'll first of all talk. These next few slides come out of a summit that I gave last Thursday. I think I spoke to about 26,000 people online. It was the Scale Up Startup Summit, and I was asked to talk about what I thought the future of business would look like. And I talk about, we went to bed in 2019 and we woke up in 2030. And, you know, companies like Trained In is a great example of this. Trained In is definitely the future of the new norm. It's part of the new norm. And so the first impact that this new world is going to have on all of us is there's going to be more flexible and remote working, definitely. Let me just renew my attendees because I see there's a couple more here. Let me just update that. So there's going to be more flexible and remote working, definitely. And you know, we're all part of that here. Okay, I'm working from the back room in the house here. There's no mystery over that. The second then area is there's going to be more technology, artificial intelligence impacting us as business people, owners or employees, and collaboration tools, such as Webinar Jam, which I'd never heard of before, but it's a great tool. And there's obviously Zoom, and there's many other tools out there, Skype, and there's Teams, and then there's Cisco tools, et cetera, et cetera. The third main area then is real estate. I do think that we are going to see, you know, some of these tower blocks that you can see here. I think this is New York. Yeah, that's definitely New York. Some of those will be moved from office use to residential use. And I think you might see some more greening in city centers, which isn't a bad thing. And then finally, and most importantly from all of us, what I call globalization version 2. And what I mean by that is there is really going to be very little limit on who you can connect, on who all of us as employees or as business owners or business leaders or entrepreneurs can connect with in the future or today. So just in the last three working days, I've had conference calls with people in Adelaide, South Australia, right bottom right there, Hong Kong, Beijing, Los Angeles, across Europe. It's just a bit mind-blowing, really, who you can connect with. And that obviously impacts all of us in terms of our growth journey. There's also, I think, going to be a move from dependency to global presence. I think those businesses that have relied mainly on China for supplies, I think, are going to be looking at other places in addition to China to get the supplies. So I think the whole landscape of business is going to change quite radically. A lot of it for the better. You know, I think the whole area, the idea of, you know, commuting 2 hours each way every day of your life, I think is probably going to change, which is not a bad thing. And hopefully stress will come down a little bit and there'll be more personal time as well. So how does that impact all of us here on this program? Well, to be able to be ready for this new age of business, we all need to be thinking in terms of strategy, right? Whether all of you here are looking to start your own business, or whether you have your own business, or whether you are part of a team looking to improve or develop your business, these same things apply. Strategy, you know, you cannot avoid having strategy. You can work on the fly to an extent, I started a business in Australia. We didn't even have a business plan, but the chances are circumstances will catch up with you. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Okay, the old saying. So you can't avoid at some point having a business plan or a strategy document. You have to do this, and all of us have to do this. Our CV, or for those of you who don't know, if you go onto LinkedIn, you can actually click and you can actually download your profile as a CV type document, which I do. When I'm asked to provide a CV, I don't even bother with my own CV. I just download a PDF of my profile. Okay, that's our strategy plan. That describes what we've done, and hopefully, if we've configured it the right way, what we plan to be or who we're trying to attract through that LinkedIn profile. That's your strategy. That's your personal, should be your personal strategy document. So you can't avoid this. And there's all sorts, this is just a bit tongue in cheek. There's all sorts of tools out there you can use, mainly often free tools online to plan your goals and your projects for the next year or the next 3 years or whatever, however you plan your own personal growth journey or your business growth journey or your leadership growth journey. A Gantt planning chart is one of the oldest ones out there, and you can break down different tasks for different periods. I'm just showing this because it's very important not just to say, right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to grow next year, I'm going to build this, I'm going to do this, without having some sort of plan to hold yourself accountable. You have to do that. That's really, really important. I've mentioned before the whole area of questions, and just to go a bit deeper into this, and if anybody is interested more in the whole science and art of questions, as you can see at the bottom there, I talk about there are various types of open questions. There's about 12 different types of open questions that we can use to leverage to influence other people. And I haven't included them here because that's a whole course in itself. But I run a course in using questions to influence other people, and it's a very, very powerful course, and it's a very powerful way for us all to give ourselves the best chance from a business growth perspective to find out what we need to find out to feed into our strategy, but also to network and to grow. Questioning is the best way to find all that stuff. And I mentioned before, Tony Robbins talks about successful people ask better questions and as a result get better answers. It's so, so true. And I say that earlier on when you're trying to build rapport, you ask open questions, how are you feeling, blah, blah. And so an open question is the opposite of having a no or a yes answer. That's a closed question. So a closed question is if you say something and the response has to be yes or no. You're better off early in building business growth rapport or any rapport in your life to start with open questions that allow for a conversation. But then when you're getting closer to sort of sealing a business deal or closing the job, whatever it is, or promotion, then you can move towards more closed questions. Okay, I won't get into too much detail on that. Any questions would be great on any of this stuff we're covering today. Okay, let me just refresh that. Okay. So the whole area of listening deeply and using silence strategically, this is critically important as well. And listen and silent, if none of you have seen it before, have the same letters, just in a different order. And those of us who use silence strategically in communication, when you're asking questions, and then you wait for a response or you wait for the lack of response, is what's not said often reveals more of the truth, that it builds into your power equation as a good leader, and therefore enables you to maximize your business growth. That's what good business growth people do. They ask questions and they wait for the response, and it's often, probably more often than not, it's what's not said back you really need to be tuned into, if you know what I mean. It's about being empathetic, having empathetic listening. That's really, really important. If anybody has any comments on that, on their observations or experiences with listening to what comes back in a conversation, but also noticing what's not being said back to you, that's critically important. That skill set is very, very important from a leadership and a business growth perspective. A little bit around teams now. We're going to get into the whole area of working in teams, whether in your business, in your company, whether you're part of a shift team or whether you have your own business and you have to collaborate with others. It's all the same principles. So what is a good team? Right, we're all a team here online. A good team is a small number of people with complementary skills. So we don't all have, if we all had the same skills, we would probably suffer because we would be blindsided by things we haven't thought about. So the best team has, a combination of a listener, a strategist, somebody who's good at closing deals, somebody who's good at writing things down, somebody who's well organized. That's the best team, right? Complementary skills, who are committed. So that's the first thing. You've got to have complementary skills. Then you've got to be committed to a common purpose. You can't have those different skills and then pull in different directions. That's when politics happens and things go wrong. That team is prepared to work towards a common performance goal. That's really important. And then finally, that team is prepared to hold themselves, all of us, mutually accountable, right? So we're all in this together. Sorry to use the old phrase that's been bandied around a lot, but that's what a team is. Small number of people, complementary skills, committed to a common purpose, prepared to be accountable, and that's what a team is, okay? Team management challenges. Having said that, right, there's no such thing as a perfect team because teams are made up of human beings, and human beings, one day I might feel up and Sorcha might be down, and the next day Sorcha might be down and I might be up, okay? So teams are often what I call cauldrons of bubbling emotions. The more people you have in the team, the more emotions can come out, and this is often where things go wrong because teams are human beings, right? They're not just numbers. And human beings have emotions every day, good emotions and not so good emotions. And we have to find a way in a team to manage all that, chaperone it. And there's all sorts of processes out there to do that. There's forming, norming, and storming processes, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole area that we're going to get into of cultural, the impact of different cultures on a team environment. And I'm assuming, and it's just an assumption, that there might be more than one culture represented here on this call, and that's good because Ireland is very, very multicultural right now, particularly in the younger generation, and we're going to deal with how this impacts business growth through teams. And we're talking about teams in terms of business growth because that's how businesses grow, effectively, through having teams. Even if you're a one-person business, you still have to have people who support you. And particularly in this online environment, this slide talks about how on earth, if you're online, does a team communicate and collaborate successfully and form, storm and norm, and get the best results out of collaboration online. Well, this just gives you an idea of the sort of things that we should all be thinking about. And we're doing this here online. We need to define the terms of reference. Why are we here? We're all here to do this program. If anything, we should be over communicating with each other. So Sorcha's putting files there, and I keep looking at the chats, and we have polls in there. So the more we communicate, the more likely we are going to feel that we are included in this, right? We need to create a safe place for all of us to communicate. This is all very safe. None of what's discussed here ever goes outside. We need to show particular sensitivity to. This is very important. If you work in head office, and head office might be in Dublin, but a sub branch might be in Galway, people in head offices really need to be much more sensitive to how people in sub offices feel, because, and I've worked in both headquarters and a sub branch, people in sub branches often feel, rightly or wrongly, that they're not being listened to. So that's very, very important. And then there's all sorts of communication tools we can use and scheduling programs to keep this back on track. So just something to be mindful of. It's important to keep the wheels of the business going round in a remote virtual environment. The whole area of culture, this is much more interesting, is the whole area of cultural assimilation. Okay, so I'd imagine there's probably 2 or 3 cultures represented even just on this chat here, right? And cultural differences. So, the difference between, an Irish culture or an English culture or a Polish culture or a Czech culture or Chinese or Indian, whatever. Cultural differences come from our different national histories, our different economic histories, geographical histories, and political histories. And they all go in and form a cultural identity, right? We all know that. And cultural differences really can make or break good business growth. I work in the aviation leasing sector with, aviation leasing companies, was before this year. And one in particular, based in the IFSC, had 350 staff from 86 different countries around the world. So you can imagine the cultural challenges involved in that environment. And so some of the tips that I've listed there, you know, if you're operating with somebody who's not from your original culture, is very, very important to find out about whoever you're talking with. Find out about their culture or learn about their culture. You don't have to become an expert in it, but have a sense of where they come from and, you know, what is the culture? What's the Chinese culture like? What's the Polish culture like? What's the Czech culture like? That's number one. Number two, respect differences and earn trust, right? We're all different, but we're all equal, right? All 7.5 billion people on this planet, whether we like it or not, are equal. Number three, be aware of how others may perceive your culture, because stereotypes, as you'll see in a second, and there's some really interesting graphs I'm going to show, they're true to a large extent, although bear in mind we're all individuals, so we can all break our own cultural stereotypes, and then find ways to try and bridge those gaps. Something I hadn't fully realized as a native English-speaking person living here in Ireland, until somebody from Spain said to me about a year ago, she said that people who are not native English-speaking here in Ireland have to work 3 times as hard as you, Simon. They need to understand what you're saying because it's not their natural language. So they're processing, while you're just processing one thing, they're processing 3 things. A, they need to understand what you're saying. B, they need to apply it internally and try and comprehend how to respond in your language. And then C, they have to respond in your language. They're working 3 times as hard as you. And I'd never really fully appreciated that. So I'm very, very sensitive to that now. Imagine if I went to work in China, I'd be lost, okay? So we need to be much, much more, particularly in English-speaking languages. And for those of you who may not be native English-speaking on here, you'd understand this and you're probably smart. The English-speaking populations of the world are quite lazy with their language. They just assume everybody's going to speak English. So that's very, very important. The first poll here is, we're going to talk about different cultures, right? And this is all relevant to business growth because, as I said, businesses don't operate in a vacuum, particularly here in Ireland, where we all have to work together, right? Which would you say is the least hierarchical? So in which culture would you say it's easiest to move from one social class up to another, or maybe back down again? Which do you think is the least hierarchical? Which is the most socially mobile culture? Is it the Israeli, the Irish, the US, the Finnish, or the New Zealand? I'll give you 30 seconds. So which do you think is easiest if you have get up and go and you work hard to move up the class rank? Israeli, Irish, US, Finland, or New Zealand? Wait for the first one to start moving. So which do you think is, this is a stereotype, but this is a generalization, is the easiest to move up the hierarchy, move from one class to another? If you work hard, there's limited limit on progress. Is it Israel, Ireland, US, Finland, and New Zealand? I'll be really interested in any observations or any experiences any of you had, and we'll talk not just about these countries, but any other countries. Sorcha saying, I think that one needs some thought. Yeah. And there's no right or wrong answer. And if you don't want to answer, you don't have to. We're not holding anybody to this because I'm going to show you a nice, interesting graph anyway that's coming up. I'll give you a little 30 seconds more if you want to have a stab at this. Finland is out there in the front, probably because maybe just one person put in Finland, but we'll see. So which one do you think? Israel, Ireland, US, Finland, or New Zealand? What I might do is I might just keep going. And this is probably going to be quite hard for you to see, but this graph is a very interesting one. And I'll just describe it. Let me just click on the chat again. Barbara, don't have enough experience in other countries to guess. Okay, that's a good, honest answer. That's honest leadership. Let me just click on updating attendees. Okay, so what this graph shows, and if you can't see it, maybe Sorcha can enlarge it, but let me just explain what it shows. So this is the only one I've ever found on the internet that shows 2 axes, the X or the vertical axis and the Y axis. So the vertical axis shows those countries that are at the bottom, like US, is the most individualistic. So we all know that it's all about how you can get on in life in America, and it's less about the community, right? Whereas the opposite, those countries in South America, I was a bit surprised. I think it was more Far East Asian countries, but they're there as well. But South American countries are a lot more collectivist. It's about the common good more than the individual. And this is very generalistic, by the way, and there is exceptions here. So that's the first axis, the X one. Then the horizontal y-axis. This is the hierarchical axis I mentioned before. So those countries to the far left, so the answer is Israel, of the choices that I gave. Those countries to the far left, you're more able to generally to rise through the class ranks, whereas countries on the far east, on the far right, less upward mobility. Now, I couldn't comment on Slovakia, but Slovakia seems to be very far to the right, and some of them, Russia and Malaysia, Philippines, etc., etc. So that's very interesting. Ireland comes, as you can see, it's kind of bottom leftist, so it's not as individualistic as the US, Australia, Great Britain, but it's more upwardly mobile. There we go, Sorcha, thank you. More upwardly mobile than the UK or the United States. Big rider to all of this is somebody pulled me up on this when I was doing a program in an aviation company who was from Japan and said he was surprised that Japan was in the middle. He thought Japan was a lot more collectivist. And somebody else in the group said, I said that was a non-Japanese person who said that. And the Japanese person said, well, it depends on how the questions were asked. If you ask a Japanese person in private, they would be more individualistic. But if you asked a group, because of the group think thing in Japan, it would say more in collectivist. So he thought that this survey was done in private. So there's always caveats to this, and it also depends on geographical location in Ireland. It depends on the age. I'd say an older Irish population would be more collectivist, and younger would be more individualistic, probably closer down towards the US. I would say the young Dublin tech sector. Okay, so let's move on. I think I can, yep, just waiting for Sorcha there. Petra's saying, feel free to comment on Slovakia. I won't get offended. I wondered where that surname is from. I have actually been to Slovakia, been on the Tatras Mountains, but I have no idea about either the collectivist, individualistic, or the hierarchical structure in Slovakia. So maybe, Petra, if you want to share what you think would be awesome. So stereotypes exist, as you can see on that chart, right? But we'll be very careful, because at the end of the day, as it says in the big letters that I put in there, we're all more similar than we think, right? I think I say all the time when I give training, forget about stereotypes are real, right? But more importantly is that 99.9% recurring of human beings on this planet, what's more important to them is to love and to be loved, right? 99.9% recurring forever of human beings on this planet just want to love and be loved. And all stereotypes and things come below that. So just be very, very careful about stereotypes. Petra, I don't know whether you want to add anything there, but that's probably why I'm not going to offend you, because I actually think stereotypes are fine, but what comes above that is the personality as the individual. Okay. Any questions on that before we move on? So bearing in mind that we have different cultures here, which is great. And, you know, my grandfather was Polish and my grandmother was Irish, and there's English as well. And so I have a mix of culture, and we need to recognize that we are all different, right? We all possess unique talents and abilities. We need to hold clearly thought out core values and ensure that somehow the way we manage each other is in a simple and measurable way. We need to find a way together of celebrating success. We need to be open as possible without being offensive. We need to foster respect, enthusiasm, integrity, and honesty. That's so, so important. Those companies that have as diverse culturally, from a gender balance perspective, and in all other ways are being shown increasingly in surveys to be more sustainable. So this stuff is not just aspirational. This is business growth underpinning stuff. It's so important. So building team spirit in multiple cultures, as we are here on this call, we all need to show respect and dignity towards each other. We need to find a way of building personal rapport, as Petra and Barbara you have by putting those entries in there, which is great. We also need to confront difficult issues in person. There was some news back in March, April, in the early days of lockdown, where one company in particular was firing people using Zoom. That's not the way to do it, right? Doesn't matter how modern and funky and new your company is, there's no substitute to human dignity, right? And doing this stuff face to face, even if it's on a Zoom call, right? You need to front up to people with bad news and good news. Avoid putting people on the spot and causing embarrassment. And don't forget words used in haste. And I'm talking to myself here because I've messed things up in the past when my emotions bubbled over and I've said what I shouldn't have said, particularly in a negotiation in China, and trust rapidly dissipated by doing that, and you don't get it back. So the first thing to do in a crisis, and this is very, very good advice, is to do nothing, right? If you're in a crisis and something bad happens to you, the gap between the stimulus, the bad thing, and your response is where sanity lies, right? So don't forget the stimulus. When something bad happens to you, and it could be today, or it could be tomorrow, or hopefully it's not for a while, and your response, that's where sanity lies, in that gap. So you have a chance, instead of just flying off the handle quickly, to process this, sleep on it ideally, and then deal with it the next day. That's so, so important, particularly in a multicultural environment. And I'll show you another graph here, which is very interesting. So teamwork, all of us here need to listen to each other and respond constructively. We need to give each other the benefit of the doubt, particularly because of language differences and also because cultural differences and belief structures are different to thoughts, right? So a thought is just a thought. All humans have a thought. A belief is something, is a sub-thought process, but it tends to be more influenced by our environment, our cultures, our backgrounds. And, you know, for example, in the States, it might seem mad to a lot of us outside the States, but 50% of the population are pro-Trump, 50% are anti-Trump. And that's because both sides have formed they have been influenced by different belief structures behind them, right? Whether it's education or lack of, or whether it's politics or news, we need to be mindful that people are entitled to their belief structures. It doesn't mean they're right, though. So that's really important, just to bear in mind all that stuff. Predictors of success. This is a whole long list, and if you're interested, if you ever do a program or training and you want to, give training on what you think would be how multicultural organizations thrive. This actually comes from these slides come from a program I co-delivered with Dermot Mannion, the former CEO of Aer Lingus. We're actually doing one in a couple of weeks in the aviation sector around cultural sensitivities and how organizations work together and how teams work together and politics within organizations. This is just a comprehensive list of some of the things that you need to be doing in a multicultural organization. Patience is a massive one. Sensitivity, tolerance, having an interest in each other is very, very important. And I won't rattle through the list, but you can all read that for yourselves. And if anybody has anything else to add to any of this area, Petra or Barbara, feel free to do that, or any of you. Okay, so the next poll here is there are two types of communication cultures that impact business growth, right? There are direct communication cultures and indirect communication cultures. And obviously I'll show you the answer in a second, but which do you think is not a direct communication culture? Which do you think is an indirect communication culture? And I'm not going to define what that means yet, but what do you think is an indirect communication culture? Scandinavian, Japanese, Russian, Swiss, or American? Which do you think is indirect? So I'll just wait for that. I'll give you 30 seconds or so, and that should start in a second. Yep. So which do you think of those five from a communication perspective, that's the clue, is indirect? Somebody said Russian. Somebody says Japanese. Japanese is in front. You're kind of on the right track. Okay, so Japanese number one, Russian number two. Okay, I'll just move on. Just make sure we're running on time. We're running exactly on time. Good. Okay. So you were completely right in this group, which is actually very unusual. So as you can see here, this was a program done in the States. So direct communication cultures. So when include countries like, or cultures like German, United States, Switzerland, Scandinavian. Probably be interesting your thoughts on Ireland in a second. Indirect, the most indirect culture in the world. So indirect, so direct means, you know, in America, Australia is very direct, right? So in Australia, where I lived for 10 years, if you ask somebody how they feel, they'll say, I'm great, mate, or not feeling good, mate, right? There's no embellishment. You don't leave the room thinking, what are they thinking, right? So that's a direct culture. Indirect cultures, we often say the Japanese in particular. I'm not picking on the Japanese here, by the way. And I see Japanese and Russian are joined here. We often say the Japanese are very inscrutable. It's very hard to read what's in a Japanese person's mind from a Western business perspective. I had no idea about Russia, by the way, but it seems at least a couple of you have put Russia in there as well. I had no idea. I've not really had any experience, although I live opposite the Russian embassy here. So I see a lot of toings and froing in the embassy there. But indirect cultures, Japanese would be the most indirect culture in the world. France, I can't really comment on. Arabic, Mediterranean, probably yes, more than some of the more Germanic, Anglo-Saxon cultures. So that's at the highest level. Any comments or any disagreements on any of this stuff? It'd be great to share your thoughts. So how does this impact? So how did the two different cultures, direct and indirect, impact the way you, from a business growth perspective, can excel or fail at work, right? Well, struggle at work. So the first way this impacts your business growth space is in terms of decision making. So decision-making processes are generally different between indirect and direct cultures. So indirect cultures, I'm talking about the Japanese here because I've had a lot of experience, and Chinese as well. I don't know about the Russian. Be interesting if somebody can share, and obviously zero politics in this chat, but any business observations you've had with Russians would be interesting. I don't know whether Petra or Barbara have had experiences. I've had no experiences. But indirect decision makers may not make a choice on the spot, even if they have authority. So that's been my experience in China in particular and Japan. Whereas in the direct cultures, if you go to a meeting with an American business person, they tend to have the authority and they'll make a decision there. Okay, that's a brutally distinct distinction that I've given there. So how does that impact communication? So a direct culture can become, an American could become very, very frustrated in Japan because the American direct culture honors quick thinking and fast decision making, whereas the Japanese is the opposite. I'm just looking here. Yeah, Barbara. I heard once Japanese have a lot of unwritten rules. For instance, employees can only leave the workplace once the boss has left. I agree. There's all sorts of these rules. And also in China as well, I've done a lot of business in China in particular. It's considered disrespectful to leave the workplace when your boss is still working. Not sure how much of this is true, though. I think there's still a lot in that, Barbara. I've done a fair bit of interaction in Japan. There's no judgment on this. It's just the way their culture operates. So indirect decision makers may not make a choice on the spot, even if they have the authority. So somebody in Japan, direct would become frustrated with that kind of culture. And conversely, indirect business operates more on a consensus-based decision-making process. That's been my experience in China. I've bought and sold product in China. I had a watch company once, and I was buying product, and I also helped a pharmaceutical company sell into China. Funny enough, Wuhan was the city I went to about 5 years ago in Hubei province. And whereas 3 of us went from Australia, we went to one meeting, and there were 14 Chinese in the room. Opposite the 3 of us, and because that's the way their decision making is. Petra, that's a good point. I was going to ask what you thought about Ireland, and Petra, that's great input. You've reminded me. You think Ireland is 50-50, can be very direct, but I've experienced as well there might be a lot of fluff. That's a really good point. I'm glad you reminded me. So in my conversations and you'll probably smile when I say this, probably all of you will smile, because it's not just non-Irish who think this, by the way. When I've done lots of training around this area in Ireland, and nearly every Irish person I've spoken has said that Ireland is actually, I do a whole program around deal making, which you'll see in the 3rd session. Ireland is actually one of the hardest places in the world to close business. And that's because, whereas Australia would be the opposite, because Australian is very direct, and you'll know you'll either get the deal or you won't, right? In Ireland, you can spend, and this is kind of what you're saying, Petra. The Irish are very direct from a personal perspective, and it's a lovely place to network and communication and to have friendships, etc. And I've got great friendships here, the best friendships I've ever had, and I'm from England, but they're here in Ireland. But if you want to close business, it's very hard. And there's this thing called the Irish yes. And Sorcha saying way too much fluff, and I agree 100%, Sorcha, and it's really frustrating, and everybody here says it. So why doesn't everybody just get together and stop it? But anyway, the Irish, yes, the Irish culture generally, and I'm not being racist or stereotypical, generally doesn't like to say no, right? And so you can network forever. I could actually write a book. When I arrived back from Australia in 2017, I met 4 people in the second week of January 2017, and I could write a Venn diagram showing those 4 people led on to hundreds of other people, this person to this and this person to this. And I would say in 2017, I probably met about 500 people to establish myself back into the community, because I've been away for 10 years. And I would say of those 500 people, from a business perspective, purely business, I had a lot of enjoyable chats, but I would say 450 were a complete waste of time. 30 were very interesting and potentially could lead to something. 20 did either lead to something or have led to something over the next 3 years. So you have to get through a lot of fluff, as you said, Sorcha. And so that's interesting. So that's decision-making processes can be different. Then the second difference is how does this manifest in meetings? So how does a Japanese person or a Russian person cope in a meeting in Ireland, right? Or the opposite would be the States. So in direct cultures, meetings tend to be restricted to people who have the authority on the topic. So in America, you'd have the 2 decision makers there, right? You wouldn't really have a whole load of juniors, whereas in Japan, I'll give that as an example because that's the most direct extreme, they tend to bring every member of the team, even juniors. In direct cultures, there are different leadership ideals. In both cultures, there are different leadership ideals. So in direct cultures, leadership is rewarded. We've just spoken about leadership growth. If you're energetic, charismatic, action-oriented, you have grit, you have all the things that I've mentioned. Whereas indirect cultures tend to reward more thoughtful, quiet, calm, that kind of inscrutable, almost Buddhist-like quiet strength, okay? So there's a different way of communicating in meetings in between the 2 different cultures. So this is really important to get a sense of the differences. And then thirdly, how do direct and indirect cultures communicate differently? Well, in direct cultures, communication tends to be quite explicit and direct. Certainly in Australia, it was the most direct place I've ever been. No, mate, not interested, or yes, mate, I'm interested. And it tends to be in American culture very action-oriented. So you'll have the meeting and there'll be a task list, and this person does this and that. Indirect cultures, and again, I'll talk about Japan because it's the most extreme. It tends to be, indirect cultures tend to avoid direct confrontation. And we're going to talk about confrontation and emotion, I think, in the next session. And I'll show another diagram which shows emotional countries and unemotional countries on an x-axis, and confrontational and non-confrontational. And the most emotional and confrontational is Israeli culture, and the most non-confrontational and non-emotional is Japanese. Ireland would be kind of around the middle. Ireland is more emotional than the UK, but less confrontational than the UK. The Irish way is to avoid confrontation generally. But again, it's generalizing. So indirect cultures avoid direct confrontation when conflict arises. They use a lot more implicit language, nods and winks and all this kind of stuff. Communication is more elusive. So for somebody from America dealing with that in a meeting in Japan, you can imagine they would get lost. Okay, so this is just a flavor of some of the differences that all of us are going to face in an increasingly, remember Marshall Goldsmith's quote at the beginning, an increasingly diverse, facilitative world. We're all going to have to get better at this stuff, particularly then overlaid with being online. Even when the vaccines roll out and hopefully, you know, we all get back to some sense of normality, we're now looking at potentially never, ever going back to full 100% in office. And I hope we don't. It looks like we're probably going to have a blend, maybe 50% in an office environment, 50% at home, or maybe 30% at home. So I think there'll always be some remote. Barbara's saying it'll be grand. It's like a life mantra for many. I agree. Petra's saying, and Irish people I come across don't really plan new products. It will be grand, which for me is quite hard. There's a huge amount of that. I've just experienced that in the last week with my wife. We're interested in selling our house on the market and buying a smaller house. And we had to provide our bank details to, I won't mention one of the estate agents, with the actual balance in the bank account a week ago to prove that we were, realistic about wanting to look at this property. And it was only that we're viewing it at 1:30 today. It was only literally about an hour ago during the break that we were told the viewing was happening. I mean, how about that for last minute? It'll be grand. And my wife said that's the Irish way, and it drives me nuts because I was chasing them all weekend. I want to know. But anyway, we have to be tolerant. Barbara, I'm being skeptical. Yeah, I'm also a little bit skeptical about how much positivity that is coming out. Everybody seems to have 90 to 95% magically in 2 weeks, because don't forget they got shareholders. But I do think I'm more hopeful than I was that we will start coming out of whatever we're coming out of. Maybe that's just we're going to start becoming a little bit more smarter in terms of dealing with this pandemic, rather than closing everything down, just allowing those who are healthy enough to continue and telling those who are not healthy or more vulnerable to take more care. But anyway, I'm digressing. Any questions? It's good that we've got some interaction. Any questions? I just want to quickly address the whole area of gender. And I'm not pointing fingers at men and women, but I've written an article called Gender Balance for Better Business, and I'm running a program. It's early stage, but a program around this to help businesses become much better at this. And what this slide is showing, and there's no surprise here, and I'll just say it out there, that those businesses, and there's been some proof of this, Sheryl Sandberg has done a lot of work at Facebook, and also in the military space where peace deals are negotiated and you bring the feminine in. I won't talk about men and women, but obviously women are more feminine than men generally. When you bring the feminine in, peace deals tend to be more sustainable. So obviously, the masculine, and we all have masculine in us, all of us, right, men and women. The masculine is more about outcomes. There's more testosterone aspect to it. Outcomes, it's about results, it's about goals, it's about win, right? The feminine, as we know, is more about empathy and the process. And those of us who have more of a balance are much more likely to be more sustainably successful, right? And the same for business. That's all that's talking about. If anybody disagrees with any of that, and I'm not going to get into politics here, but there are obviously cultures, and we've mentioned one or two where probably isn't as much balance, or there probably isn't as much balance as in other cultures. New Zealand would be a great example of a very balanced culture. Now, that doesn't mean it's a perfect culture, because I know, that there's minorities there, and the Maori people would say that there is not a balanced culture. No culture. There isn't a single culture or country on planet Earth that has everything right? Okay, so that's gender balance. Just in the last 18 minutes, we're going to look at a little bit around communication. So I've mentioned the importance of communication, but how is this impacted by the fact that we're online? So 93% of all communication is non-verbal. So if I go silent for 10 seconds, or 5 seconds, because I can't stand silence, and you look at my face, what am I communicating with my face? Am I showing interest? Am I showing surprise? Am I showing concern, amazement, disinterest? That's the stuff that 93% of communications are about. But I would say that online, it may be 50-50. It may even be more verbal right now, because this is new to human beings. Having a whole year online is the first time in the history of humankind, right? And you can imagine the amount of books and studies and programs and training programs that are going to come out of this period. So generally speaking, so how does this impact business growth? Well, 95% of all innovation that's ever been created by human beings has been done by people in a room together. iPhone, cars, internet, radar, it's been human beings in a room together, brainstorming or by themselves, coming up with ideas, normally groups of people. So the fact that we're not together, how is that impacting things? Well, obviously laboratories, they're working together, which is great. But just be mindful that there is going to be some changes coming. And I think that doesn't mean there's going to be less innovation. I think they're going to be different types of innovation. And how does that impact on you in your business growth capacity online? So just be mindful that technology is great. Imagine if this pandemic had happened 15 years ago, or even 10 before Skype and Zoom. Imagine, like we would have all, I saw Matt Damon on The Martian on television the other night. We would have all been like The Martian in our own house, not talking to people. Imagine, right? So if now is the time to have a pandemic, and apparently a pandemic roughly is every 100 years a major pandemic, so hopefully I won't be around for the next one. Now is the time to have it, not back in the 70s or 80s, right? But just because we have technology, don't think that it's going to cure everything. As it says here, if you're doing business, online deals, you need to be thinking of technology as using technology tools for different aspects. So this kind of tool here, Webinar Jam, is fantastic for building rapport, and you can pick up verbal and non-verbal cues. You can see me moving my hand, which I do a lot, etc. But if you need to make a quick point, you can use WhatsApp or social media or text. If you want to share big files, although I do see there's a really good file sharing process here, there are maybe other mechanisms. There are databases. And don't forget, you can still use the phone, right? So just think of technology as a tool to use to generate business growth. That's all it is, right? It's not going to replace the human sentiment and all the stuff we looked at in the first session: emotional awareness, situational awareness, emotional intelligence, empathy, all those kind of things, motivations, etc. That they're going to stay, and we're going to need to drive technology to suit our requirements and not be driven by it. Having said that, there are huge benefits to technology, as you can see. Real time. I was giving this keynote last Thursday to 26,000 people. I never realized there were 26,000. All I saw was this thing live on my Zoom, and they were just transmitting directly to Vimeo. And so there are all sorts of benefits. There is, real-time, single source of truth. It's quick, it processes, it's efficient, it's wonderful, right? So technology is amazing. And there's also the whole area of artificial intelligence. And I think this is going to have more and more impact on business as well. Okay, any questions on technology? I mentioned this 100-day thing. Just be mindful that it doesn't just impact your leadership capabilities, but it feeds into the business. And any business that needs to be thinking in terms of going from day 1 to day 100 needs to be looking at these 5 areas. Leadership. Do you have the right capabilities? Do you have a single unified voice? Do you lead by example as the leader? Do you have the right people, measures, and incentives? Do you have the right culture? Do you have the right decision-making structures? And do you have the right processes, practices, and systems? So there's a huge amount. It's one big, big cake you're baking when you start a business, right? It's never simple. And people who think that business and business growth is easy are kind of kidding themselves. It's complex. Change. We're living in a time of change. And just in the last 13 minutes, I just want to talk a little bit about change and how we navigate all of this, and then look at mindful business, mindful business growth, and then we can talk about the homework for the week. So, in this time of change, we all have to have a plan. And I'm talking about us as business owners or entrepreneurs or as employees. Change is inevitable, right? It's essential. You're not going to have a business if you stand still. Those businesses that stand still basically end up not having a business. A business has to constantly improve, right? A bit like spiritual life. If you have a spiritual program, every day you have to try and improve. The same with a business. So, and a business plan needs to spell out the objectives, markets, and mission. And when we do session 3 in January, I will be sharing with you a really, really good, strong, watertight business plan. It's about a 20-page document with about 600 questions that you can personally use if you want to create your own business, you're in your own business, or you want to improve the business you're in or share it with people in the business. It's a really, really impactful document. So you need to good change management plan for your business. You need to look at all the areas of the business that are in fact impacted on customers, suppliers, stakeholders, and employees. So you need to have a plan. You need to set the goal. What's your goal? What are you trying to change? What are you trying to get to? And those goals need to be as concrete as possible. You need to be able to articulate that vision to employees, stakeholders. So that's really, really important as well. You need to be able to define what the change is. What is the change you're trying to bring about or you're trying to navigate? And don't forget, there's 2 types of change. There's external change. There's the stuff that comes from nowhere, like this pandemic, right? But also hopefully you understand what I'm saying here. In all of us, we have emotions, we have motivations, the things we've mentioned before, and those things also bring about drivers for change, right? So one day you might wake up and say, right, I want to do something new with my life. That is a change driver. It's not just the external stuff. So we all need to find out a way of coping with and navigating, recognizing and navigating both types of change, external, which we can't control, and internal, which we need to understand and drive as well. Because it's often the internal motivations and drivers that sidetrack us more than the external ones, if you understand what I'm saying. If anybody doesn't, please let me know. So you need to define the change and drive it. You need to celebrate the old stuff. And this is more from my experiences. If you're running a change management program in a business, or if you're new to a business and your job is to shake things up, the worst thing you can do is criticize people who came before you, right? They were trying their hardest. You just talk about what they did, what you think can be developed and adapted, and then move on. And say, you know, I respect the fact that this was here, but we need to move on, right? Say it in a very respectful, we've mentioned respectful way before. So celebrate the old, and then articulate the challenges. So for example, Joe Biden, assuming Trump ever gets out of the way, which he's going to have to legally do sooner or later, once he gets into power, he's got one big job, because he's got 75 million people to persuade. He probably is going to have Donald Trump sniping from the sides. He's got lots of serious issues to navigate. And so he had better pretty quickly tell the truth. Remember I talked about the best leaders don't perfume the pig. He's going to have to tell the American people in the world that there are some seriously difficult issues to address, and try and find a way of addressing them. If he pretends things are okay, I guarantee he's going to fail, right? Boris Johnson might be a case in point. He tends to have a tendency to always say things are great when they're not, and leaders like that generally come unstuck eventually. I'm not talking politics here, but you know, you can't perfume the pig. It's just, that's a limited game. Okay, and then listening carefully. It's kind of related to that. If people are saying to Boris, maybe this is part of Dominic Cummings going, by the way, if people are saying to Boris, you really need to get a bit softer in your government, and you don't listen to them, then you are going to come unstuck. Okay, and Sorcha and I have had conversations about Trained In, and I think it's a fantastic platform, and there's ways it can go forward, and there's ways it probably shouldn't go forward, and it's up to the business owner, as I have been, as I am, to listen, and well, listen, but also that person needs to make a decision as to whether that's the right or wrong advice or input. So listening carefully is really, really important, as we've mentioned before. And then finally, once you've done all of those things in your business growth journey, only then really should you be adjusting and setting new directions, okay? So there's a lot to onboard from a business growth perspective. So just in the last 8 minutes, I'd like to give some really high level, but very, very powerful tips on effective business growth, right? For you as an employee, or you as an entrepreneur, or you if you want to build your existing business. And this is for all of us here. So ask yourself, are you ready for growth, right? Do you have the right workforce, culture, or skills? And if you're a one-person business owner, you're talking to yourself here, or if you collaborate with other people, do you have the right people around you? Do you have sufficient and appropriate vendor capacity? In other words, can you pay your bills on time? Can you chase people who owe you? I've got one company that I need to chase for an outstanding payment. Do you have a process to do that? Because it doesn't just happen. Do you have sufficient communication protocols? Do you represent your brand externally well enough, or in the right way or enough? Do you have the right capacity and capability to conduct digital marketing? Targeted, and that's in capital, because increasingly there's so much noise out there. You know, there's hundreds and millions of us, billions of us online, and only those who are most effectively targeting are going to be successful. Do you have the right financial capacity and awareness? And we're going to, just one slide here, I'll just talk a little bit about, have you looked at your competitors? What are they doing? And are you targeting your clients to grow with you? Don't think about clients as just disposable. You should be thinking about them as partners who stay with you for a lifetime. So just ask yourself those questions. This is not accounting 101, but you also need to have, and this is the only thing we're going to talk about from a financial perspective, but you do need to have some form of financial literacy. You don't need to be an accountant, but you do need to understand. And for me, I've summed it up on one slide. If you don't remember anything else about finance, try and remember these three, what I call ratios, right? There's the gross margin, which talks about the health of your business. There's the EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization, which is a bit of a mouthful. You don't need to worry about it. And there's current ratio. Gross margin speaks to the health of your business. So broadly speaking, what that is your revenue might be $10 minus the cost of buying the products you sold, which might be $5. The gross profit is $5, right? It's half, as you can see. So your gross margin is your gross profit divided by the revenue. And that's really important. The higher the gross margin, the better, right? I don't know whether any of you know, but the most while they were open, the healthiest, the most gross margin product you can think of is actually popcorn in cinemas. One bag of popcorn probably costs $0.01 to buy, and they'll sell for $5. That's like, what's that, 5,000% gross margin. Then there's EBITDA, which you can see there. Current ratio is common sense, but it's really important. Basically, how much bigger are your assets, which include cash in your bank or outstanding bills that you want to get from your clients? How much bigger is that than your debt, right? And the higher your assets, the things coming into you, than the things going out, the better, right? It's all common sense. But you'll be amazed how many people are in business, even big companies, don't review this enough. And Sorcha needs to do this probably once a month. I do this more than once a month to see how I'm tracking, right? That doesn't mean get obsessed with it, but you need to have some sort of idea around business growth and key financial ratios. You also need to understand, just wrapping up in the last 4 minutes or so, the different channels of business growth open to you. So you can rebalance your business through market development. So you can sell more of what you do, or whether it's a product or service, to a different market. You can look at alternative channels, pursuing customers in a different way. For example, moving online. You can look at market penetration, selling more of what you have. You can look at new products for new customers, but only if you're ready to move into new products. You can sell new products to existing customers. And I think there's a couple more. No, that's it. And then on this slide, I think this slide is really important. This kind of summarizes everything we've spoken about, is that for mindful business growth, you really need to have a real eye on all of these things. You need to be thinking about, or at least feeling these things all the time. Do you have the right minimal cash flow that you need to survive as business? Do you have the mindset tools, the things we've spoken about? So, and that's why the first session about introduction and personal growth and then leadership growth, we dealt with those first, because you need to have an idea of what they are before, to enable you to stay positive and also non-deluded as a business growth person. Do you have the right strategy and execution standards? I'll share that business plan. Brand and culture, we're going to deal with that in the last session. Are you doing the right things to maintain your personal brand and your business brand? Are you communicating the right way? Do you have the right anti-fragility techniques, mindfulness and meditation and looking after your health and some of the things we talked about in introduction? Are you able to handle difficult situations and conversations in the right way? Remember, forming your own boundaries and not being a people pleaser and dealing with cultural differences. And then health and relationships, networking skills is very important. You can't, as a leader and a business person, be successful unless you surround yourself with the right people. And you're going to make mistakes, but that's important to do that. And then moving on, in terms of marketing your business, Tony Robbins, some of you may or may not like him, but you have to promote your business. You have to shout this thing out. Just because you've got a really good business plan, just because you've got the best people on board, just because you think and you've done the research, you've got the best product, it can still fail, right? In fact, it will fail unless you call it out, right? You need to find a way of promoting. And, Tony Robbins talks about various ways of getting the name out there, whether it's networking, blogging, advertising, social media. For me, LinkedIn is a huge tool. I do a lot of work in deal making and deal closing, and I didn't realize until recently there's tens of thousands of people around the world with the title, the word deal or deal closer or deal making in their title on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is a phenomenal way of connecting, and you can kind of overcome a lot of the GDPR stuff. So that's really, really important. Any questions? That covers a huge amount: leadership growth and business growth 101 in 2 hours. What I'd like you to, this is kind of a bit of homework for next time. Barbara was saying the list of skills needed to assure sustainable growth of your business seems never ending. You can put it that way, Barbara. At the end of the day, it's self. If I were going to sum all this up, it's self and situational awareness. Everything feeds into those. So do you feel that you've done what you can to be as self-aware as possible about your skills, your motivators, your emotional intelligence, what makes up you? You're never going to ever fully know who you are. Even the last day on this planet, you don't fully know. But do you have a really good feeling of whether you're analytical or numerate, or are you motivated, or are you artistic, or are you driven, or are you lazy, or any of these things, right? You need to have a really good sense of self-awareness and also situational awareness. Can you read people? Are you good at, as good as possible, at communicating with people, at influencing people, and knowing when to stop? And they're the core skills of leadership and business growth: self and situational awareness, and everything comes below that. And don't get too wrapped up in, if you spend your time worrying about this stuff, you're actually not going to do it. You're going to be worrying about it and learning about it. At the end of the day, you actually have to, and we're going to talk about that in the next 2 sessions, you actually have to go out and get business, right? You also have to develop your brand and your reputation. We're going to deal with that. And you need to then seal the business and move on, right? But all of this stuff was laying the foundations. But thanks for that. Barbara, you said it's a lifelong education. It is. I've been interviewing global thought leaders now since April, and I'm one guy called Eduardo Brasenio, who's co-owner of Growth and Mindset Matters. He's a global expert in growth mindset. I think I mentioned it last week at the end of the podcast. So he's an expert in growth mindset, right? But at the end of the podcast, I stopped recording and he asked me, how did I do? That's the expert asking me how he did. So you can never stop. And people like you who are asking questions, who are flagging concerns, who are raising queries, it's people like you who have the growth mindset. You're more likely to succeed because you're questioning this stuff than those people who just listen to me and say, right, this is easy, because it's not easy. But conversely, don't get bogged down in this stuff. I see too many entrepreneurs and people starting out and employees reading and reading and reading and reading and waiting for perfection, as I said before. At the end of the day, you just got to do it, as Sorcha has. Sorcha's done an amazing job. Yes, she's mindful of a lot of this stuff, but at the end of the day, you've actually just got to say, right, I've got to do this, right? And I'm accountable. And if this fails, I've had a business that failed, it's on my head, but at least I gave it a go. So hopefully that all helps. The homework for this week is, it would be good to discuss next time we get together, what 3 things do you commit to improve in your business and or leadership capabilities over the next 3 months, that you're prepared for me, and it can be through Sorcha. If you want somebody to hold you accountable over this between now and maybe Easter next year, I'm happy for Sorcha to connect with you through me. And what 3 things, or even if it's just one thing, would you like to improve? Either through Sorcha or through me, or both of us, it has to be through Sorcha. Would you like to come back and say, right, this is what I did, and I'd be more than happy to see how I give you my honest feedback as to how you progressed, and maybe give some tips and tricks as to how I think you could tweak it and do something differently. So hopefully that helps. And with that, Sorcha, we've got about 10 minutes. That's it.
10 minutes. Get your questions out there, everybody. I know that was so detailed and so in depth, Simon. It's so interesting to see every week. I'm taking loads of notes here myself. And
don't forget, just the tip of the iceberg. There's a huge amount below all this stuff, But what I'm trying to show is that there is kind of a process through the 7 Ps, and you can all create your own process. Like, all of you could take this program and create your own program, right? There's no rocket science to this, but it's what fits with you on your own journey.
Does anybody have any questions for Simon? I'm conscious that our next session is not until Monday, the 18th of January. So I don't want anybody to. What I will do is the registration is not open for it yet, but I'll automatically register anybody who has been on today and last Monday onto January's session. So you'll get your links in there. We'll have our next registrations for the 2 weeks of Ignite in January open probably the second week of December, I would think. So we have about a 4-week registration phase. But if you do have any questions for Simon between then and now, or if you do want to, as Simon said, be held accountable for this homework, please get in contact. My email is already up there, but I'll pop it into the chat again anyway. And yeah, I suppose don't lose your momentum.
No, that's really important because, I think it was Barbara was saying that, you can get bogged down in this stuff. And also I found that it's very easy just to listen to all this stuff and then disappear and think you're alone. You're not alone. Like my job here is to help, right? My job is not to dictate. I'm available as a resource through Sorcha, so you're not alone.
Yeah. Feel free to pop me an email anytime or give me a call. All my contact details, I think all of them are on my LinkedIn profile. I'm very accessible. And if I don't answer the phone, I'll ring you back. That's the way I kind of look at it. But yeah, don't feel you're alone. And I even posted on a complete stranger's post at the weekend that if you need to vent to a stranger, call me, because sometimes talking to somebody who you don't know can give you a lot of peace of mind, and that you're going to get a completely unbiased, unjudgmental, I suppose, support.
Particularly now, because we're all stuck in our own heads and we're all stuck in our own homes, and it's like we're kind of like jagged rocks with jagged edges. We're all nervous and anxious and wondering what other people are doing, or are we falling behind, and all this stuff goes through our head. And by talking to somebody, even just for 5 minutes, when I talk to you, Sorcha, just for 5 minutes, even if you're not helping me, just talking to another human being polishes a little bit of that jagged edge off, and you feel more like a soft, rounded pebble. That human interaction is so we kind of underestimated it before this year. I think now we know what that means. It's so important.
Yeah, it really is. It really is important. And for me, it's great to have Simon at the end of a phone, and he's doing so much to support me, because I have been essentially on my own in terms of the business side of things, but not anymore. No. I've got 3 people with me now, so it's great.
It's cool.
But that's it. Everybody's quiet on the chat, so I think they're all okay. We might leave it there.
We'll leave it there. Well, thanks everybody again, and you're all great. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but happy Christmas.
I know. This is my second one today. Happy Christmas, everybody. And
that's my first time I've said that.
I know. Have a fantastic day, Simon. As always, it was brilliant to have you here, and really informative stuff. And thank you to everybody on the call. We will see you hopefully on one of the other Ignite sessions during the week, and we take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Thanks. Bye-bye. See you. Bye.